Hiba, it's been about 3 years, March 11th, 2022, that we last spoke. What is new? It seems, at least from the external, a lot has been happening in your world, but I'd love for you to take us to today from that point 3 years ago, which feels like an eternity ago.
Oh my gosh, I know it's been a while. It's been a hot minute. Yeah, I think a lot has changed. I got married. I moved across the country from Toronto to Calgary. I switched one job to another and then switched again and started my own. I went out on my own. I started consulting, and then now I'm also in a collective with a couple other friends who consult, and that launched, I think, but yeah, this week. And so just a lot has changed both on the personal front, but also on the work front. And I think I can say, like, just genuinely so much happier. And I think the other thing that's changed, because this has haunted me since the last time we recorded this podcast, was watching back. My hobby is no longer marketing. And I cringe at that answer still so much, where I was like, why did you say such things? Have a life. And so, yeah, I actually have real hobbies now, and that's great too.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I would have totally forgot, so I'm glad you brought that up. I'll never forget that answer. As the first installment of Friends of On Marketing comes to an end, I wanted to touch on something. Not all past guests are or will become friends of mine or of the show. It's just the sad reality of business, and it's not personal. Sometimes a relationship can only be transactional, or it can only be personable for just a little bit. Sometimes that's because a person glows up and they can't be seen with a nobody marketer. I know I'm not that, but there's just that dynamic that can be created. Or they simply don't want to run it back. They just want to do one episode, and that can be for tons of reasons, many good. And then there are the few who are friends before or become friends after and then come back on for this fun installment. And then there are the rare few who continue glowing up and stay grounded and remain a friend of mine and the show. Today's guest, Hiba Amin, is one of the rare few. She's graduated from kicking ass at startups and is now the co-founder of Little Creative Planet with Devin, Pickell, and Bridget Poetker, who is also a friend of the show. Sorry if I butchered any of those last names. But beyond that, she's just a genuine human who is always trying to help, and that shined through in this episode. She opens up about her career journey and why there is so much more than just work. Enjoy this episode, and if you want to go deeper on Hiba's insights, she is from Season 1, Episode 22. This is Episode 11 of Friends of On Marketing, recorded a month ago on April 18th, 2025. This is a show where I bring friends, guests of On Marketing back on to talk anything. Emphasis on the anything. I hope it gets weird. Thank you for being here, and make sure to follow and support my friends. Their work is important, and so is yours. So reach out if you want to chat marketing, and maybe you'll get a future Friends episode. Before we get back to the conversation, let's get this out of the way. All opinions shared in this podcast are the individual views of the host and friends, guests, not those of their employers or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing or life guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you for being here. Hiba, one of the interesting places you were at was Copy AI. I have not used a product, but kind of I was aware of them because it was kind of the AI hype. Talk to me from there to kind of like why from that did you kind of start doing your own consulting and then this collective?
Copy AI it was a fun ride. I was there as a contractor for, yeah, about 6 months, full time, and it was cool. Like, I think for me, the way I learn, the way I really like to learn about different things is through building content for them. And so I find that, obviously, as you're producing content for your audience and you're learning about your audience, you're doing interviews with customers, you're researching to have like high quality, accurate content and all these things. And so Copy AI was just, I don't think I would have had as much exposure, I would say, to how AI comes into the content generation process. There's my dog just walking in.
Finally.
I wouldn't have had that much exposure, I would say, to AI and like really understanding the possibilities and the limitations, I would say, through that, without that role, because a lot of it was like building a prompt engineering course for beginners. It was, and like really just understanding what prompt engineering is, like what are these like little like tips and tricks, like the very basics that really make a profound impact, I would say, on the actual quality of the content you generate. And also just understanding, like, I think the more back end of it, of like how do LLMs actually work. I think, obviously not to a machine learning level, like a machine learning engineer's level of, I would say, expertise, but having like an understanding of just even, yeah, the basics has been really, really helpful in my understanding of how to actually use AI in my day to day. But yeah, I think when that wrapped up, my husband and I went on vacation for about a month and a half, um, to Jordan and Lebanon, and then we went to Spain with friends, and came back and just kind of had a reset. And for me, I really wanted to look for, at the time, I thought a role at a larger company. I was like, I want a more fleshed out team. I want things to be like our ICP to be super concrete. I don't want to like keep going back and forth. I don't want to be chasing this like product market fit. Like I think I was just exhausted going through like early stage startup to like series A, series B, whatever we want to call it. And so it I was exhausted, and I think that was my initial like, okay, let's try and apply to some of these larger companies. But super like acknowledging that all of my experience was really small companies, and so I think I did find that fairly hard to get through the door. Like I got into a couple bigger company interview processes, but at the same time I was like, nothing's really exciting me. Like it's something's not fitting, and I stumbled into consulting, I think just purely by luck. Like Brendan Hufford, a good friend, he ended up introducing me to my first, I would say, freelance, I guess, or fractional marketing client who I still work with, which is awesome. But I just wanted to take like a part-time marketing role so that I wouldn't feel financially pressured into taking a job. Because I'd been jaded by a couple companies, and I was like, I just also don't, I want to make the right decision for me. Like I want to commit to a company, and almost like have the same feeling I had when I was at Soapbox. Like I had the best time for 3 years. Like it was just such a wonderful company. I worked with people I loved in a space I loved, the content I loved, like all these things I was just really chasing. And maybe after I left, I was possibly romanticizing it more because I was like, oh, that was the dream. Like the grass was really green. Even though it wasn't perfect, it was still great. And so, yeah, I took my first fractional role. And then I think out of just necessity, I was like, I should put something on LinkedIn, like so I don't look like I have a career gap. And I just like came up with a random company name. Like all of it felt so fake. I was like, okay, I'm a company now. And people started reaching out. And so I started building like just a roster of clients, which I thought was, it was just wild. And then after doing that for, I think, yeah, 2 months, I ended up incorporating, and I was like, whoa, am I a real business now? Like, this is wild. Um, and then I was just like, I had a full bench, I guess, of clients, and I was busy and I was happy and everything was great. And so that was all of last year, was a big, like my first real fractional marketing and consulting year. And I think kind of coming into today with launching Creative Little Planet this week with Bridget and Devin, was, the three of us had kind of gone through the same career journey. We had jobs we loved, and then we went into companies that we didn't love as much, and then we started consulting. And the three of us, I think after a year, were like, this is kind of lonely. Like I miss building things with people, even though we're building with our clients. It's still different, I think, because they want to use your hours to the best of their ability. They want to make sure their dollars are going to the right places, and so I find that you have less maybe conversations you would in the workplace where you could just kind of get to know people better and build, I would say, like there is rapport, but there's just like it's not as deep, I guess. And so Bridget and Devin were there like just as sounding boards for a year, and finally we were like, it'd be kind of fun to do something together. And so that's where I guess Creative Little Planet was born. And so we just wanted to be able to see, okay, can we bring on larger clients who the three of us, because we tackle content from very different angles, uh, could work really, really well together. And I find that the three of us too, like it's so nice. Like, and I know this is said so much in tech probably, but like it really is low ego. Like it was the nicest, most refreshing thing for me to go on vacation for a week and come back and be like, okay, well, invoice is sent, contract is sent, these briefs are done. And you're like, oh my God, it's not just on me. Like there's other people who are part of this to actually like I can lean on and have full trust in them, and vice versa. And so We started working with Balsamic a couple months ago, or maybe a month ago, and it's been so fun so far between the three of us. Like it's just been such a treat, and it's also like selfishly what I wanted from those large teams was I want more people to learn from. And now that I get to actually see how Bridget and Devin work in the background, um, I get that and I get to learn more. And it's so fucking cool. And it's less lonely because now you have people who you can just like talk to about all of these different things and they understand it because they're working at the company with you. Like it's awesome. And so yeah, I mean the goal at this point is can we bring on more of these types of projects that we can work on together. And worst case, like if smaller companies come through, and again, like this is, I would say, the low ego element of it is that we're all comfortable. Like if Bridget and Devin make more sense to take on a project together, or Bridget and I, or Devin and I, whatever, or like just one of us, I think that's the nice thing too for us is we're kind of just helping each other be more financially secure. Yeah, it's been it's only been a couple months now, but it's just been so fun. And the three of us kind of have uh, a funny thing too, where, I tell my friends in Calgary, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm starting a business with a couple of friends. Like we've known each other for years. They're like, oh, like, are they in Calgary? I was like, no, they're in Chicago. I've actually never met them in person. Like they are my internet friends, I guess. But like, it's just such I don't know. We've known each other for so long. We know so much about each other. Like it's beyond like it's professional, but it's also very personal too. And so, um, yeah, I think the reactions of friends here who are very much like in office workers are like, "What? What's going on? Wait, is this safe? Like, these are strangers?" I'm like, no, they're my pals.
I love that. There's a lot in there, and I definitely want to explore more of the Creative Little Planet. But I think it's very interesting this kind of you created an ideal or a place in which you thought you could thrive, or in my own experience recently, kind of job searching as well. It's a good step to do. It's like you're looking for your next career opportunity. Is like what do I really want? But then you can go out to reality and it like doesn't fit, or you just don't feel excited, which I had as well, which was almost like, is there something wrong with me moments where I'd be in interviews or I'd be like, and I'm like, I'm not excited at all for this job, even though like I thought this was it or I thought this was it. But I wanted to touch more on the bits that you were talking, because Bridget's been on this podcast a few times and she shared, as you said, those sentiments of, in maybe it's this interesting thought of like, not that you hit a peak, but you really had these, Bridget as well, had these like awesome early career moments in whether it's a company, the things you're working on. For Bridget, Drift just being very hot at that time. Like it's just a period in time that then, as you kind of said for Soapbox, like you are anchoring to it, which then could be like hard to ever find something that how did you, because clearly my answer is you just built the thing you wanted with the kind of collective. You're like, I want this. So naturally I'm like, we're going to build this together. But like, how did you get through that? Or how did you get over that anchoring of like it just might not be like that, or it probably won't be like that just because the time's different and you've changed and you've evolved? Like, was there anything you did, or was it just a natural process of slowly letting go of it and kind of accepting what was in front of you?
I would say like it's kind of both. Like I think on one end, like it was a gradual, natural process of just kind of letting go. But I think on the other end too, I don't know if I fully let it go. Like last year when I was going through these interview processes, I was like, I still lean so much on the template library I built for Soapbox. I'm like, this is like to date still my best piece of content. Like I love that thing. And it was just such a fun journey to build, even though it was exhausting to build. It like that was part of, speaking with Balsamic. It like that came up, like that library still comes up. And so even like a month ago, one of the companies I work with, Grow Class, like we started building, which is honestly the coolest company too. Like one of the goals that we've had so far this year is try and get all of the students that have gone through their program hired. Like that's what company has that kind of a goal for the team? Like it's just meaningful. And because I understand, like obviously business is business and you need to drive revenue and all of these things, but for that to be a primary like goal that we're actually tracking, is just cool. Like I don't think I would have had those opportunities before. And I think being able to just find things you're passionate about, and I don't think it comes like that often sometimes, like especially with some projects, like sometimes the priorities are just not as exciting and it is what it is, but that's what the business needs to do. But you can find ways to make it fun. But I think with Grow Class, like yeah, a month ago we put together this massive guide on for students going through their career acceleration program. Like here's a guide to getting hired. Like here's how to send LinkedIn connect requests that actually have a higher chance of standing out. Here's examples from people who have gotten jobs and here's their career journey. Here's like assignments that people have submitted and the feedback they got and just like things that are actually helpful and just knowledge that, if you're not as I would say if you haven't spent as much time connecting with other marketers, you might not have access to that information. And so you might have a lot of assumptions and they might be wrong sometimes in the interview process. And so here's how to negotiate. Here's like a massive list of things you can actually negotiate in the process. It's not just about your salary. And so I remember kind of going on a tangent here, but I talked to Sarah, who's the founder, and I was like, I don't know if I'll ever build anything as cool as that template library because that was also like a piece in our early relationship too, where she was like, I'm pretty sure she contributed to the goals library and different things. And so, um, she was like, we will find more things, like more cool things for us to build. And, that's just obviously really nice to have the client like wanting to push you as well. But I think, yeah, like to kind of go back to your question, part of it's a gradual process of like, okay, maybe the dream I've made up isn't real. Maybe I'm like fantasizing this too much. But the other part is like, yeah, it is kind of hard to let go sometimes, especially when you're like, did I peak? um and hope and you just kind of chase like maybe that high. I've definitely been chasing that high for a while and I don't know if I've gotten near enough of that high, but there was also so many elements like that was early days in COVID where you're just stressed and like working and not knowing what else to do with your day and like just so many other factors that for sure contributed to that high. But yeah, I think gradually like I find myself leaning on that template library, at least in my example like body of work, I guess, less and less. um but at the same time like yeah, I'm definitely still chasing that high. I think the other thing too to make the big company like view that I had or fantasy I guess of going into something like that, my husband was working at Facebook Meta at the time too, and I was like, well, if you're not having fun at this big company, like I think at that point I realized like, oh, it's very team dependent, very manager dependent, like all of these things. And so I was like, okay, well, the grass isn't necessarily greener, even though I keep saying it is, because you work in startups long enough, you're like, I'm fucking exhausted. Like I can keep building the ship, or like I keep building the plane as we're flying it, and we keep crashing sometimes, and like I don't know what to do, but sometimes it flies, and I'm just like tired, and we don't have product market fit, and blah blah blah. But like the content is cool, and people like some of the content, and that's great. But is that driving revenue? Blah. And so I think the grass is just never greener, I guess. But I think that probably helped me break out of the thought of I need to be at a bigger company to feel like I'm gonna learn, I guess was my main thing, and have support from my peers because you can get that in smaller. And I'm getting that as a consultant to a certain extent. I'm definitely getting it now that it's Bridget, Devin, and I. Um, so yeah, I guess building the world you want for yourself for work. But I mean, saying that from a very, I guess, like privileged standpoint where, the three of us have spent a lot of time building connections. And I think relative, had we not built these connections, it'd be really hard to, prospect and do all these things and try and close sales and try and close like contracts within our means. We've been able to thankfully, like, yeah, we've been privileged to be able to build something like this together, which is awesome to say. But yeah, also aware it's not the reality for everyone sometimes.
No, that's definitely fair. I think the grass is greener where we water it, which is kind of the point of if you want something, go and build it. So you kind of grasp like these things that were missing and you couldn't get it, or you didn't find it in this, but you were able to kind of water it over here. And now the collective is giving you those things. I think your point on who you work with is very interesting, that no matter the company, clearly company has culture, company is like has the water that they swim in, which then can create outcomes, but it's also like your team. Like someone could just be a really angry manager or like a really non-supportive if you need some, like, so that's, I found that to be interesting. How do you think about your career? Because I think careers are so unique. Probably 20, 30 years ago, the way in which you thought about a career was vastly different than how you think about it today. Even this sense of, personally, I'm almost thankful I haven't got any of those dream jobs or anything. So I'm like continually doing the actions without hitting this peak moment, because I think that would be a really hard thing to go to the mountaintop and then kind of like come back down and then like be in this place where I've just been in the valley my whole career. So it's constantly like I feel as if I'm constantly taking steps up and up and up, which is maybe like the old way of it. You keep working up and up. How do you think about career now? Are you thinking futuristically? Are you just like, let's put food on the table, let's have fun today? And that's a great way to live as well. How do you think about your career?
When we were talking last, I know my answer would have been very much like, I want to keep growing in my career, and I like, it was very much like live to work, I think, mentality. Um, because I think, it seems like it's a pretty natural life cycle for people going into the workplace. It's just, you want to prove yourself, you want to grow, and you want to, like, obviously make a salary that gives you a comfortable life, like all of these things, like you have aspirations, and you feel like you have a lot more to prove. And not to say that I don't think I have things to prove anymore, but I think the move to Calgary really shifted my mindset, where Toronto was like a very tech centric world that we were living in, within our communities and like all the things that we were doing. And it was so career oriented, and kind of coming to Calgary, there's sunshine most days. And I'm like, I want to be outside. Like that sounds so much nicer. And it's also like a much more laid back lifestyle here, I would say, from like just a community perspective. And so that really shifted my mindset. Now, you know, I want to, like, I think there's so many fun aspects of work, but yeah, if I can go to the mountains instead for a day, I would opt for that for sure, way more. And so my mindset around my career has completely shifted to like, work to live. Like, what is the next trip I want to go on? And how does that impact the hours I'm going to work so that I can have fun on this trip? And like, just all of these things. And so for me, like, if I can build some semblance of a sustainable business for myself, um, and just be comfortable. That's kind of, I guess, how I look at it. And like from the finance perspective of my career, it's just really, what's my next milestone? Is it like buying a bigger house, or is it going on like to Japan? Like, what does that look like? And how do I basically align my revenue goals to the life goal instead? And I think that's just been a really fun shift. It's been a healthier shift for sure, because soapbox days, especially in COVID, I would be working like 10, 12 hours, and I would just be like exhausted. Even though I would tell myself, and like I did enjoy the work, but I was still very much like, work was marketing was my hobby, is what I told myself. And now I'm like, no, I've been working all day. Like, I'm tired. I don't need to push through. Like, what's the point? Unless there's like obviously a massive deadline, then sure, that'll happen and ebb and flow. But on a just average day, no, I'm gonna go outside and, touch grass. Like,
Oh,
and
I love
so
that.
I think for my career, I just want to make sure that I'm contributing to the marketing community, especially for some of these younger marketers coming through. Um, and just like staying connected to friends, and people that I've just, have yeah, helped relationships with for a long time. But then beyond that, it's just like, be able to work on cool projects with people I really like it working with, and not be miserable at companies. And which yeah, I think that's just the most realistic answer I can give you.
Which is, in the end, I think there's probably a lot that matters, but to me, being happy, being able to sleep well at night is a big thing. I love how you talked about moving. I found many people this kind of this dichotomy where sometimes moving helps, and then other times you move to run away from yourself and you can't run away. So I've seen different friends go to different places and it not work, but I've seen friends like you that go to a new place, and because of the flow, because of the tempo, because of all these things, they change, which I find that to be fascinating. There's two threads though from your story, from your career story, that I'd love to pull. There's this thread of, at least from Bridget and Sarah Pion, like going so hard, doing what you're talking about, 12 hours, gaining this really high level of competence, and then not a wall, but you just start to like really want to change and I want to help or I want to do that. So I think it's impossible to get to where you're at, start building the things you've built without the thousand shots in the gym when nobody was looking or all that. So I think you position yourself as privileged. You, Bridget, and Devin. He's going to be on the podcast someday. He hasn't been on it yet, so I don't know him, but I think you should give yourself a little more credit that it is something you've actually worked hard to build in the networking and all that stuff. That I mean, you can either choose to clock out at 5 and not send that DM or whatever, or you can spend that extra time. So that's one of those threads. But then there's this other thread from Chris Walker and Scott Barker and all these individuals who are kind of hitting this point at which it's like, oh, business success, I've reached the pinnacle, but now my spiritual side. Now, like, and it's going to be coined something. There's only 3 people listening to this podcast right now, but do know that I was like one of the first ones. There will be a coined term of this where it's like these business right now, man, but like business leaders get to a point where they've achieved a lot that it's like, wait, there's a whole other side of life, or even more so of a half of like spiritual and life satisfaction and doing all that stuff. So for me, before Chris Walker and before these people did that, I thankfully had either mentors or people that like pointed me at that route of like, you can be really great at marketing, but if you don't understand like what's the purpose of life, if you don't understand how to be kind, how to be calm, all these things,
Yeah.
then like your trophies and your accolades mean absolutely nothing. Talk to me about that. Have you felt that like you being pulled more in this like kind of less work, working to live, living to work, like, or is it a little bit different than maybe the Chris Walker and that of this like, you know, fall off your horse-esque moment and now you're like, I need to seek wisdom in spiritual realms or however that may be. No offense to them.
No, no, but I don't think I'm there yet. I think I'm still, yeah. No, not there yet. Because I think there's still a lot of things in my career that I'm like, I want to kind of
Sure,
accomplish
sure.
that. Like I did my
That's fair.
first conference talk ever in November, and I was like, this is wild. Like, what the hell? Like, I shouldn't be speaking in front of an audience. And it was, and I
I
hate
love
public
that.
speaking, but I was just like, I think there's still so many areas for me that I'm like, there's more opportunity to push myself out of my comfort zone. And so I think I'm not, yeah, I don't think I'm at the pinnacle of my career yet because I still like, I was on Nick Bennett's podcast a few months ago. And even then I was like, yeah, it's like, it's a business, maybe like it's not real. He's like, hey, but this is a real company. And I still say this to my friends. They're like, this is a business. I'm like, well, it's just me and like sometimes contractors and it's like it's not a business. I'm just vibing here. And so I think maybe once I am able to at least fully acknowledge that I'm a business, then maybe that's the next stepping stone of like, oh yeah, I'm a founder. I'm like, am I a founder? Not really. Like I'm managing
Oh,
myself.
oh,
But
I love that.
yeah, I
So not at the pinnacle, but I think
not at the
it's
pinnacle.
important that you're realizing it before you get there. There's this Thomas Merton quote where it says, you know, you put your ladder against a wall and you climb to the top of that wall and you look around and you realize you should have put it against a different wall. I think it's very
Mm,
smart to be halfway up the wall to realize there's a different wall. So I think that's important. That I don't think, and I think it's actually a bad strategy to hit your pinnacle to then realize
yeah.
family, spiritual, all these things matter. And not saying it all, Chris Walker and Scott Barker, I'm not even sure if they have children. So that also is like this really interesting thing of we don't always see the full story of people. So I always enjoy podcasts, so these conversations just to go deeper in that. But I love that just the painting of a creative journey is so like spirally. I know I've seen a few visuals of that by this Liz woman who does great drawings online of like this like swirliness, and that sounds exactly kind of as your. It's like you've hit these peaks, but you're still kind of going up. It's inspiring for someone like me and hopefully the 2 to 3 other listeners to be like, I can do both. I can strive for these big things. I can hit my pin somewhat of a pinnacle and keep going higher, but also realizing that work isn't everything and there's something else or more out there.
And there's been honestly like two analogies that have really stuck with me to help me get there because I think for a while it's like it was very surface level of like, yeah, work life balance, and like not actually holding myself accountable to that. But I think the two things, and depending on the situation, it'll come into my mind. But the first one is just how will I feel about this decision in 5 years? And so it's not even like for big decisions, it's like, oh, going to dinner with my family versus like writing two more content briefs. Of course, like I think it's just that those are the kinds of things that I'm like, oh, actually, yeah, in 5 years, I would be way more thankful for that dinner. And that was one thing that was really like just a helpful thing initially, I would say, in that transition from caring too much about work versus life, to switching over to prioritizing more of these life activities. And the other one, I just remember seeing when I was thinking about, I was researching wedding vows because I was like, oh, what should I be doing for my own? And this woman basically shared a story from a New York Times bestselling author, and I can't remember the name of the author, but basically it was this analogy around, you have glass balls and plastic balls in your life, and you're constantly juggling these balls. And so the glass ones, you have your kids and family and I can't remember the other ones, but basically really, really core things to your life. And then the plastic balls could be like these tiny little things that are insignificant. And as you're juggling, you know, the glass balls are when they fall and miss, they shatter and you can't put those things back together. They're always going to have those cracks. But plastic balls, they're less important. Those are things that you're like, again, will this matter in 5 years? No, let it fall. It'll bounce back. It's totally fine. And so I think those two analogies really, really stuck with me where I'm like, oh, actually, no, I should care about these life things a lot more. And, I think as we age, like, I've experienced my first few big losses in life. And I think that's also put things into perspective of, yeah, people like you know, mortality and all these things. And so I think that stuff is also really settled with me where I'm like, I do want to spend more time with people I care about while they're here, while I'm here. And so I think just a lot of small things have really, yeah, I think just made it easier to really prioritize life compared to before. Because before work felt like your entire world. It felt like I don't know, it just felt like this which I know work is very important and it's helped me get to a point where I am in life today. And like you said, putting in all of that time and effort. But yeah, I'm at a point now where I'm comfortable enough to be able to be like, it is important, but if I have the ability to shift and put some of these things that long term are going to be significantly more important, have a much more meaningful impact on my life, yeah, I'm going to prioritize that. And so, um, mostly just sharing those analogies in case any of the three listeners are are
Hopefully three.
in that kind of like back and forth and in that transitionary period. It's like just ask yourself, is this going to matter? Like what decision I'm going to be happier with in 5 years?
I love the intentionality that creates, especially the glass and I remember it. I thought there was like four, but I kind of forgot the analogy too. But I think though, but even if there are like four but like I think every person, it's an important, good practice to go through and be intentional about physical, like health. What is that to me? Is that can I kind of for my 20s throw that ball to the side, or is that a glass? And essentially, if I get too deep in different health issues, then essentially I'm kind of screwed. So I think it's important because everyone's will look different, but if you don't do that, I can't see most people who don't think about it naturally putting these things first, because just work, life kind of happens, and it's a challenge in social media. Nobody's talking about their families a ton. I recently had a convo with two individuals ask like what they're most proud of like kind of work, but just in general, they only could be remembered for one thing, and nothing came out about work. It was, being a great husband, being a great father, and it's like, but that's not on social media. At least, I'd put my child
Yeah.
on there just for clicks, but not everybody's talking about like this actually leads to some level of fulfillment. So I think intentionality is super important. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Devin, and finally doing this. It's been a bit in the making, trying to record this. So I appreciate the time and the thoughts. They were great.
Yeah, no, likewise. Hopefully, I don't cringe at whatever I've said today for the next 3 years. But no, it
Well,
was so good to catch up. So thanks for having me.
of course. And this is the end of the podcast. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.